I've been telling you about our topic for discussion this morning, and persons have already been messaging me to say how happy they are that we're broaching this topic. We're looking at the whole matter of seemingly more corruption in our society, in leadership in our society, much more than, say, 5 years ago. And this is information that we gleaned in a survey that was conducted by Market Research Services recently, where the Don Anderson's Market Research Services Limited revealed that over 60% of Jamaicans believe that those in power have failed to address corruption in the last 5 years. The poll found that 65% of respondents perceive more corruption today compared to 5 years ago, contradicting Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Perceptions Index, which ranked Jamaica 69th out of 180 countries with a score of 44 out of 100. This morning, we do have already Helene Davis-Whyte, who is a very well-known trade unionist and a political commentator, already joining us. And we're going to be trying once again now to find Mr. Kevin O'Brien Chang so that we can have him added to this call and then get our conversation going. So stick around, ladies and gentlemen, as we just try to make that connection one more time. But this is a very, very important, very serious matter that I think it's important that we get a chance to look at this morning. Good morning to my guest. Helene, are you there? Let me see here. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, Helene, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and I'm hearing you, Helene. Thank you so very much, Helene Davis-Whyte, for joining me. And also, good morning and welcome, Kevin O'Brien Chang. How are you both doing today?
Hi, morning, everybody. Giving thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is a troubling matter, Helene, and it seems like in the last 5 years, corruption has not been going in the right direction in this country. Are you surprised at the findings that came out of that survey that was done by Market Research Services about corruption?
Not surprised, but just to make the point that what it actually speaks to is the perception, the corruption perception index. Mm-hmm. And I am not surprised, mainly because over the last several months, we have been having all the information and rumor, propaganda, whatever it may be, around the quote-unquote illicit six, and all the things happening around the Integrity Commission. And so I think people would have come away with a perception that corruption is higher in Jamaica than it was before. And I think when we look at what has come out of Transparency International and what they speak to in terms of the governance framework and what appears to be the hold, so to speak, that the executive branch of government has over Parliament and its oversight committees and the various, parliamentarians that would have come out and it appears are opposed to the work of the Integrity Commission. I think most Jamaicans would have come away with a view that corruption seems to be more embedded in our country than before.
Thank you, Helene. Kevin, do you believe it is mostly perception or is it reality? And by extension, what factors do you think contribute to the disparity between Jamaicans' perception of corruption and that of Transparency International ranking?
Well, the Transparency International ranking, the fact is it is the highest ever in Jamaica. I mean, higher is better. The score is 41 out of 100. That's the highest Jamaica's ever had. When the government came to power, it was like 34 or something in the 30s. So if you're going to look at the facts on the ground, Transparency International is not saying the country has gotten more corrupt by their score. And frankly, it's the only objective measure we have. You can talking about what's the data, what's the evidence. And the only objective score we have is the Transparency International score, which is the highest ever. So the facts don't support the perception. And the other thing is, even at the Integrity Commission reported Andrew Holness, there is zero proof he has illicitly enriched himself. There's nothing there. I think it's $1 million Jamaican or something that he may have gone up 1 year. But there's nothing in that report that he has illicitly enriched himself in any degree. And another thing, every administration, you tend to have a scandal people talk about, right? Remember it was back in the PJ days, cell waiver scandal. Then in Portia you had Trafigura, and both rolling you had Manat. Under Andrew Holness, there's not a scandal you can look at. There's a big name scandal people can refer to. And also every minister that has been accused of scandal or some wrongdoing under Andrew Holness administration, they've had to resign. So I said, you have the perceptions out there. But when you look at the facts, you're saying, okay, where's the facts that people can say that there's corruption here? Is there anything concrete anybody can point to? You talk to people, and there's nothing concrete I can remember or hear of, or any numbers I can see, or even that Integrity Commission report about the Prime Minister, about how much he has enriched himself illicitly. So there's a lot of talk. Illicit six has proven we can't find any illicit six. And the PNPA saying, oh, it's all JLP, and we've had the Mr. Michael Phillips the other day, he was, they're going to charge him for being late with his returns or something. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the facts on the ground, you hear the talk about the corruption, this administration is so corrupt. But when you look for the proof and evidence and the data, I'm not seeing any. And when I ask people, they don't seem to be able to find any either.
Helene, it must be of concern to the government, though, especially with general elections due within a few months from now of this perception. And I want to ask you, how do you believe that the government can address the widespread perception of corruption, here in Jamaica?
You see, perception, they say, is almost 100% reality, and that is why it has to be important for the government and for Jamaicans generally, because if we all perceive that we live in a corrupt society where not only in government but elsewhere we have corruption that is pervasive, then we won't have the kind of development that we really like. So it has to be important. Going into an election campaign, we have already begun to see the results in terms of support for the ruling party sort of wavering now, and the opposition is gaining, and so clearly issues like these are issues that drive people. And so it has to be something that the government addresses. I think they have to deal very carefully with the whole matter of the Integrity Commission and whether or not it appears that the government itself supports the work of the commission. And when you talk with a lot of people and you discuss with them the whole issue of the government appearing to not be in support of the work of the Integrity Commission, Jamaicans how they think. If it not go so, it near go so kind of story. And so you have to be able to make it appear that while you may have some difficulties with the work of the commission, you are in full support of the commission and its operations, because this is an organization that was set up to deal with this entire issue of corruption in high places, corruption generally in the society, and it therefore means that it was set up for a reason, because there was in fact corruption. There is in fact corruption in Jamaica. And so I think the government has to come out and make it clear that they support the work of the commission, that, while they question certain things, that there is not this kind of animosity, so to speak, because you have heard different members of the government coming out, almost lambasting the commission. And so we have to be very careful in how government members and the parliamentarians generally treat with the various reports of the commission. And that's one of the reasons why, I heard Michael Phillips come out and apologize and so on. I think that's the right kind of tone. So while he may be upset that it has gone to where he has actually been reported and it has come out in the public sphere, I think he has adopted the right kind of tone by explaining, by nonetheless apologizing, because it was through some fault of his own why he was named and so on. I think that's the kind of tone that parliamentarians and government have to adopt, so that people have they become more convinced that all parliamentarians are attempting to deal with this issue of corruption.
Okay. I want to ask you, Kevin, also if you think this is a major hurdle that the government has to overcome leading into the election, and also to find out from you if there are other measures that they need to whether implement or utilize to in terms of how they pursue corruption that will help to appease the citizens of this country.
Richard, you saw the polls on Sunday, the Don Anderson polls. They asked, what is the biggest problem facing Jamaica? 48% said crime. About 15% said unemployment and lack of opportunity for youth combined together. 6% said corruption. Corruption has never been a big election issue in Jamaica because, to be frank, most people think both parties are corrupt. No better herring, no better barrel. 48% crime, 6% corruption. Which do you think the JLP should focus on? The JLP's problem is they must focus on telling people murders are down 19%. The people are not aware. If people think you're failing on crime and yet murders are down 19%, you're heading for a 10-year low. That tells you that you are not communicating to the people that murders are down. So that's what the JLP needs to focus on. You look at the numbers. 48% think crime is a big problem, 6% corruption. Which sensible person, what are sensible people going to do? Focus on the 48%, not the 6%. And that's what the JLP needs to target. You have to convince people because the facts are there. You have to get the message out. Murders are down 19%. You're heading for a 10-year low, right? And that's what they need to focus on. If you are serious, you look at numbers. You don't look at cat and talk and this and that. That's why people do polls. And it is a foolish person who focuses on 6% thinking corruption is important and 48% thinking crime is important. If the JLP is serious about trying to win the election, they get the message out. Murders are down. We're winning the war on crime. We're not failing on crime. That's what people are saying. And unfortunately, we have incidents like last night. 5 people get murdered somewhere. These incidents get front page. But the general trend remains that murders are down significantly. And that's what the JLP is messaging. If you ask me, needs to focus on. Murders are down. We're winning the war on crime. That's what people care about. First, corruption has never won or lost an election in Jamaica.
Well, it is something that the government has to address, and I suspect very, very soon. Helene, I wanted to focus now on the role of civil society and the media in helping to combat corruption. How do you see their roles?
I think they have important roles. And certainly an organization such as JAMP is doing very good work, I think. Not just talk, but, going in and getting information and doing very good research. I think it's very important because despite what Kevin says in terms of, the what Jamaicans think is important going into an election campaign, the link between corruption and crime is very important. Yeah. So we have different types of crime. There is one aspect of crime that is actually linked into corruption, and so we have to, recognize that is there, which is one of the reasons why when you're looking at dealing with crime, you're talking about something like unexplained wealth orders, those kinds of things, because you are able to identify that because of a person's operation in a particular sphere, they are able to, garner resources. And so we have to recognize that there is that kind of link as well. We went back several years. One of the persons who, a permanent secretary that was killed, it was rumored at the time, not because he was directly involved, but because of corruption that was going on with government contracts at the time, because the reason why he was killed. So we know that there is a link. And so civil society, I think, has to be able to stay atop of the fray, so to speak, between the two political parties, because what Kevin says is true. Most Jamaicans think both parties are in fact corrupt, and we have to be able to deal with that. I was hearing this morning about some former head in one of the South American countries being found guilty almost 20 years after he had left power because of corruption. Those are things that I think Jamaicans want to see in terms of being able to say that something is happening with corruption, because the general feeling is that no big man in Jamaica. The big men will get away with it, and that is a kind of view that we have to be able to, show that, what goes for the goose actually goes for the gander. So I think civil society has a very important role to play in educating Jamaicans about governance, the governance framework, making us understand, how we deal with things like budgeting and so on, how government operates in terms of how we deal with contracts, etc. Bringing that information out, going in there, using the access to information as to get to information that you can actually bring out and give to the Jamaican people, both in terms of what is good happening in the area and what is bad. We have to be able to give Jamaicans that kind of information so that they come away with a view that it is not just something at one level of society, something that pervades in terms of action against anybody at any level in terms of what corruption or what corrupt actually may be involved in.
And Kevin, this whole perception of corruption, is it likely to have an impact on our economic development and even on foreign investment coming into the island?
Well, if there's real corruption, Richie, a country doesn't have money to invest in infrastructure and equipment for police, this kind of stuff, and your debt will go up because you're corrupt, you're wasting money. We haven't seen that in Jamaica. Our debt to GDP ratio is heading for the lowest ever. A lot of roads are being built. We see 150 police stations renovated, stuff like that. The police force has gone from 14,000 to 18,000, the biggest ever. And this costs money. You have to pay them. So the evidence of corruption robbing Jamaica of investment, again, there's no evidence of it. And Helene is talking about these civil society groups. Now imagine a couple of weeks, last week, the mayor in Mandeville said there's nothing wrong with unexplained wealth, publicly. It's on record all over the social media. Did JAMP come out and condemn them? Did the Jamaican for Justice, did the National Integrity Agency? No. I've heard nothing from these civil society groups condemning an elected official, the mayor of Mandeville, saying nothing is wrong with unexplained wealth. So Jamaicans have little respect for these civil society groups. I mean, they're not very consistent. They will condemn some people, but some other people, they don't touch them at all. So there's very little respect for them. And as I say, when the watchdogs are seen as not honest, what do you expect? The corruption, I agree, is something that needs to be addressed. But let's face it, since 1990, not a single Jamaican politician has gone to jail. Jackson in 1990, 34 years ago. If you ask me, Jamaica is a system everybody's comfortable with. Everybody buzz about corruption. The politicians are happy they're not going to jail. And the people on the ground, as a policeman told me once, how can we be corrupt if we are not, when people are offering us bribes? We can't take bribes unless they're on for them. So when the people talk about how the police is corrupt, who is more corrupt? The people offering the bribe or the one who's supposedly might take it or might not? The Jamaican people chat a lot. Are they any more less corrupt than the politicians? Are the who's offering the bribe to the police? I'll come back to that point. And so you look at elected officials, but you also look at the people who elect them. If Jamaicans feel the politicians are so corrupt, they keep voting for the same set of people. So in the end, it depends on what Jamaicans want and what they are comfortable with. As I said, you get the politician that you deserve, because politicians do not appoint themselves. They are elected. And Jamaicans must say if the corruption is too much, whose fault is it? Is it them, or must we look at the man in the mirror?
All right. I want to thank you, Kevin, and thanks also to Helene Davis-Whyte. Thanks to both of you. We're out of time, but I really enjoyed this conversation this morning. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.
Just before you leave, though,
yes, Helene.
I need to make the point, coming on the back of what Kevin just said.
Yes.
I think where Jamaicans have come down in terms of whether they're happy with what is happening or not is that more and more Jamaicans have decided not to vote. Mm-hmm. The last elections had less than 50% of the country voting. So the Jamaicans are expressing their dissatisfaction in another way. And that way, I think, is
where the third party vote, where the independent get vote, when they can choose independents and they're not. What does that tell you? If they vote for PNP or JLP, you can vote for independent candidates, reject the two parties, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, but just making the point that is not only a Jamaican people. Worldwide, people are opting out of the system, and therefore. But when
you have independent choices and you don't make them, how serious are you? You can vote for other people than PNP or JLP, and they're not.
I'm just saying that. In terms of whether it is that Jamaicans are happy or not, we cannot just say that, because at the end of the day, some are opting out rather than to come in.
But if you pick up PNP and JLP, make other choices.
I don't support it. I have often said to persons, once I'm voting, if it is even voting for the rest of the two evils, I have a commitment to vote. And so I will say to persons that we need to vote. Because at the end of the day, we have to look at that as a phenomenon that is a dangerous phenomenon in my view, and that is something.
But we have a choice to vote for not PNP or JLP, and we're not doing it. So again, the people must take the blame. If you don't like JLP or PNP, vote for independents, and they don't. They're free to do it. Nobody's stopping them.
I take the point that we really think this corruption perception will have an impact and continues to have an impact in terms of persons going out and feeling that they ought to support either of the parties, especially if they're not pleased with either of them, and feel.
Vote for new parties, Richard. This is my problem with Jamaica. Vote for somebody who's not PNP or JLP in Parliament. Not one since independence.
They don't see the options as maybe viable.
Well, as I said, it's there. Yeah. So you can't say the people don't have the choice. Nobody's holding us down and saying we have to vote for these parties.
All right, Kevin. Thank you. Helene, I thank you as well.
Take care.
And I wish you both a wonderful day. This was a really lively discussion that we had there with Kevin O'Brien Chang and Helene Davis-Whyte.